This is Kelly Hill, Executive Editor of RCR Wireless News. I'm here at Smart Cities Week D.C. with Steve Teubner of Ernst & Young EY, and you are specializing in smart buildings. Tell us a little bit about what you're going to be talking about here at the conference and some of the trends that you're seeing.
Sure. So one of the things we're looking at with buildings within the city ecosystem is what can buildings do to really enhance the overall community of a city, of a neighborhood. And we're looking at smart buildings within the bigger ecosystem of smarter cities. And how can a building be effectively used to be more sustainable environment? And how do we really address occupant requirements? And so, if you look at most of these buildings today, they're vacant 40%. And so we don't need all the buildings that we already have. So how do we use that better? And so one of the things we're looking at is deploying IoT to figure out, what's the general utilization of a building. Do we need to build another one? Can we use this one more smartly? And can we share resources across the neighborhood, across cities? So it's really talking about the optimization of space in the physical environment.
Okay. And then does that also have a relationship with the broader network, or is it sort of contained within itself?
So it's an interesting question because it can be contained within itself, but what we're seeing is we're seeing more campuses, we're seeing more mixed-use type of buildings that are part of the broader context. So the network then expands beyond the building envelope into your community, and so we're seeing like communications across different types of facilities to optimize traffic patterns across both those, multiple buildings at one time.
Okay. And then I'm assuming this probably ties in with things like utilities, power usage, all kinds of different sensors and wireless technologies as well to collect that data and process it.
Yeah, one of the bigger trends is, district cooling, district heating.
Mm-hmm.
And so how can we take that burden off an individual building and share that across multiple facilities so we can get, greater scalability? So we're looking at deploying IoT, artificial intelligence. How do we start to really optimize these buildings and campuses and multiple facilities across the neighborhood for use, energy, as well as meeting that neighborhood need.
Okay. Now we are at Smart Cities Week, so what role do you see cities playing in this, either in terms of their own buildings or in terms of codes and other rules or regulations that they may be able to nudge people in this direction?
So cities obviously play an important role when you're commissioning a building, when you are going for building permits, and so that's one effect where we've seen obviously cities have a big role is to make sustainability key lead requirement. But that only touches on the energy side, right? I think we can really talk more about sustainable uses. And again, do we really need to build that building when 30% of that, let's say a city block, is not being used? Mm-hmm. Can we start looking at this in more than just a one-off building? And I think cities play a really important role for how do we balance that, right? How do we balance the private optimization of profit by builders with the more sustainable uses of a city? Mm-hmm. And can we share resources more? Can we flow traffic from one type of environment to another based on best appropriate use of a facility? And so I think cities can play more role, and I think we see that with some mixed use, some master planning of larger developments we're seeing in Manhattan and big cities across the world. So I think the more that cities can get involved in that, can encourage that. I also think cities can do a lot with their own portfolio. I think if you look at most portfolios of city real estate, they're definitely not in the best of shape, and they're certainly not optimized yet. So again, tying that into the bigger fabric, I think, could be a really important step.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned a couple of examples. How do you see people around the world sort of digging into this topic and, thinking more about smart buildings and not just making buildings more intelligent, but also thinking about utilization differently?
Mm-hmm. So again, we're talking about, for district cooling, district heating, mm-hmm. Localized power generation. We're seeing buildings that are coming online with their own generation capabilities, right, through solar or through wind. And so again, we've got this ability to do a distributed grid. And so I think the first step we can do is start tying that together, again, where buildings are more of a mesh network as opposed to independent silos, independent buildings. And then we can take that to the next step of, really focusing on the highest and best use of different types of buildings and having them work as a mesh network when it comes to utilization. And again, that takes cooperation. Maybe that's kind of a little bit idealistic, but I think ultimately that shared type of environment of, this building is really going to be for more general assembly, and this other one here is going to be more for private focus retail. We're going to see more, I think, more of a blending in terms of the mesh network concept.
Okay, great. Well, Steve, thank you so much for your time.
Sure. Thank you.